Shalom, I'm John Behrens. This is the final chapter of Ruth recorded at Restoration Messianic Fellowship. It will be chapter 4. Enjoy the study. Chapter 4. Meanwhile, Boaz had gone to the gate and sat down there. And now the Redeemer whom Boaz had mentioned passed by. He called, "Come over and sit down here, so-and-so." Now, so-and-so in our language has kind of a negative connotation. What it is it's not naming the guy, and its Hebrew is come over here and sit down, specific one. In other words, you, specific person, but not named. And he came over and sat down. Then Boaz took 10 elders of the town and said, "Be seated here." And they sat down. He said to the Redeemer, "Naomi, now returned from the country of Moab, must sell the piece of land which belonged to our kinsman Elimelech. I thought I should disclose the matter to you and say, acquire it in the presence of those seated here and in the presence of the elders of my people. If you are willing to redeem it, redeem. But if you will not redeem, tell me that I may know. For there is no one to redeem but you, and I come after you." This land is up for sale. You've got first right of refusal. If you want it, let me know, but if you want to refuse it, let me know that, because I'm next in line and I do want it. "I am willing to redeem it," he replied. Boaz continued, "When you acquire the property from Naomi and from Ruth the Moabite, you must also acquire the wife of the deceased, which is the wife of Elimelech's heir, so as to perpetuate the name of the deceased upon his estate." Notice, upon his estate. So the idea here is that piece of land goes to whomever Ruth has as a child. Remember that it belongs to Elimelech. If you get a child on Ruth, then the land belongs to that child eventually, and it does not become part of your estate, even though you will control it for some period of time until the child either comes of age or we get the year of release. But it doesn't come to you permanently. 6. The Redeemer replied, "Then I cannot redeem it for myself, lest I impair my own estate. You take over my right of redemption, for I am unable to exercise it." In our example of and Onan and Judah and Tamar, if Onan had gotten a child on Tamar, then that child would have gotten the firstborn's portion of Judah's estate, bypassing Onan. But if that child is never born, then Onan gets the firstborn portion of the estate because he's the oldest. So by getting a child with Tamar, Onan imperils his own estate. So something like that is apparently going on here with this guy, but it's unspecified. There's a note here in the Tanakh, which is to say, lest I impair my own estate. And then the note is, i.e., by expending capital for property which will go to the son legally regarded as Mahlon's. In other words, anything I spend on that property goes to Mahlon and not to my line. Verse 7. Now this was formerly done in Israel in cases of redemption or exchange. To validate any transaction, one man would take off his sandal and hand it to the other. Such was the practice in Israel. So when the Redeemer said to Boaz, "Acquire for yourself," he drew off his sandal, and Boaz said to the elders and to the rest of the people, "You are witness today that I am acquiring from Naomi all that belonged to Elimelech and all that belonged to Chilon and Mahlon. I am also acquiring Ruth the Moabite, the wife of Mahlon, as my wife, so as to perpetuate the name of the deceased upon his estate, that the name of the deceased may not disappear from among his kinsmen and from the gate of his hometown. You are witnesses today." So this is the formal, I will do it. All the people at the gate and the elders answered, "We are. May the Lord make the woman who is coming into your house like Rachel and Leah, both of whom built up the house of Israel, prosper in Ephrathah, and perpetuate your name in Bethlehem. And may your house be like the house of Perez, whom Tamar bore to Judah. through the offspring which the Lord will give you by this young woman. So notice that they're going through Perez to Judah, not through Shelah, not through and not through Onan. Those two guys disappear from the story because Perez is the heir, if you will, of Judah. 13. So Boaz married Ruth. She became his wife, and he cohabited with her. The Lord let her conceive, and she bore a son. And women said to Naomi, "Blessed be the Lord, who has not withheld a redeemer from you today. May his name be perpetuated in Israel. He will renew your life and sustain your old age, for he is born of your daughter-in-law who loves you and is better to you than 7 sons." This not only ensures Ruth's old age, if you will, and Boaz's too, although Boaz is probably able to take care of himself, but it also ensures Naomi. 16. Naomi took the child and held it to her bosom. She became its foster mother. And the women neighbors gave him a name, saying, "A son is born to Naomi." They named him Obed. He was the father of Jesse, father of David. This is the line of Perez. Perez begot Herzon. Herzon begot Ram. Ram begot Amminadab. Amminadab begot Nahshon. Nahshon begot Salmon. Salmon begot Boaz. Boaz begot Obed. Obed begot Ishai. And Ishai begot David. Now, a couple of things about this. If you go back to Leviticus 18:15, it says, "Do not uncover the nakedness of your daughter-in-law. She is your son's wife. You shall not uncover her nakedness." Now, why is that important? That's what Judah did, which means that Perez is what's called a mamzer, which is a child of a forbidden union. The Torah was not given at this point, but the point is, under Jewish law, Perez is a mamzer, which is the child of a forbidden union. If you go back to Deuteronomy 23, where we just were, Deuteronomy 23:3, "No one misbegotten shall be admitted into the congregation of the Lord. None of his descendants, even to the 10th generation, shall be admitted into the congregation of the Lord." So a mamzer is basically out until the 10th generation. So how many generations is it from Perez to David? 10. So if you count Perez and you count David, Perez is 1, David becomes 10. So the deal here is, remember we started off with the business of Judah and Tamar. When Tamar shows up pregnant under suspicious circumstances, what's Judah's initial reaction? Take her out and burn her. She has committed adultery. She is still bound to my family. As we said last time, if Judah does in fact burn her, then basically Judah is cut out from the kingship of Israel. Because from Tamar is going to come David, and from Tamar is going to come Yeshua. So if Judah carries through with his initial reaction to kill this gal, basically Judah sort of disappears into obscurity because all he's got left is Shelah, and none of this stuff happens. And of course, Judah does solve his problem, and the way he solves his problem is by confessing that she is more righteous than I am. In other words, he takes responsibility. And in that process, of course, we have this chain of progeny that starts with Perez and winds up at David, and of course, ultimately winds up at Yeshua, because Yeshua is the son of David. So all of this depends on Judah's character at the beginning of the story that we started 2 days ago. Judah has got to show responsibility, step up, accept responsibility, let the children be born, raise the children as his own sons, and it then flows down to David, but Perez is still a mamzer. It's interesting that, in fact, we have exactly 10 generations from Perez to David, who becomes the first Judaic king of Israel. He also will step up and accept responsibility when he does something sexually incorrect, just as his great-great-great-great-great-grandfather did. So the character of Judah, which is why you want Judah to be kings, is that they are able to admit a mistake and make a correction and go on and do the right thing. It isn't clear Levi can do that. It isn't clear that some of the other sons can do that, but Judah can. To wrap up, one of the things that you can learn from this is we talked about textual criticism, the idea that as you criticize the text of the Bible, it looks like different authors do different things and that the Bible is sort of stapled together and you have these random stories that just sort of show up. The thing about the way Lot and his daughters are put into the narrative and the way Judah and Tamar are put into the narrative are both conceptually identical. They both interrupt the story of the main character. So the main character in the case of Lot is Abraham, interrupted by the story of Lot. Then you have the story of Joseph, interrupted by the story of Judah and Tamar. Identical situations. And then we have the product of those two unions being Moab and Perez. Their descendants then show up in the book of Ruth. So basically you have three stories in Scripture of attempted Levirate marriage, or Yibum. The first two are not correct and incomplete. In the case of Lot and his daughters, you have it's wrong because of incest. In the case of Judah and Tamar, it's wrong because you have a father-in-law taking his daughter-in-law. But the issue from those two relationships then comes down to Ruth, and it's done correctly in Ruth. It wasn't done correctly until after the Torah was given. Yeah, that's good. I like that. The idea that all of that is sort of accidentally cobbled together out of stories that are floating around, I will suggest to you is unlikely. If you want a really good exposition of this, go to alephbeta.org, and the Judah series is about 10 or 12, 10 to 15 minute lessons, and he goes over in great detail about how the fact that the story of Judah and Tamar is in fact not tacked on there. It's completely integral to the entire story. And that also works with Lot and his daughters, and then you have it all coming together in Ruth as we have just studied. So I will gently suggest that the Bible is very tightly written and integrated. It is not, in fact, a set of random stories. It is one entire, whole, crafted message. Would somebody like to close in prayer?